Chapter 6, Part 2, Heaven Official's Blessing. The chapter name is called Clothes Redder Than Maple. Pause. Jalen didn't have those problems with the cursed... Okay. I meant to say unpause and then pause, but whatever. Jalen didn't have those problems with the cursed collar on. He was no different than a mortal. He could eat anything, and through experience, nothing he ate could kill him, either. Even if it was a bun that had been set aside for over a month, or a cake that had gone moldy, he could eat it all without harm. With such a body, oh my god, with such a body, he could pretty much get it by just collecting scraps. To compare them, building a shrine cost him money, while collecting scraps made him money, so ultimately, truly, collecting scraps was better than ascension. Jin had the looks and grace of a saint, so he had the upper hand when collecting scraps, and it took him almost no time to collect a giant bag. On the way back, he saw an old ox cart that was piled high with hay. The cart looked like one he'd seen before in Pucci village, so it should be going the same way. He asked for a ride, and the cart driver tilted his chin to signal for him to get on. Carrying his big bundle of junk, Jilian climbed on to take a seat. It was only when he settled down that he realized there was someone else lying on the other side of the tall stack of hay. This person, whose upper body was hidden behind the hay, had his left leg crossed over his right. It appeared that he was lying there with his arms pillowed behind his head, taking a rest. He looked so carefree and at ease that it made Jilian a little envious. That tight pair of black boots on a pair of long legs was a sight pleasing to the eyes, and it reminded Jilian of a different pair that walked with him at Mount Yejun. Jilian could not help but sneak several more looks to confirm that there were no silver chains on those boots, which seemed to be made of animal pellets. This is probably a young master coming out to play, he thought. The cart shook as it drove languidly. Jilian pushed back his bamboo hat and took out a scroll to read. He didn't really care for worldly affairs, but after having created too many awkward situations, he figured he'd better do some studying. The cart rattled and time passed. Looking out, they were traversing a maple grove, a sea of flaming red and a field of green. The rustic charm of the mountainous countryside, with fresh grass that refreshed the mind, was extremely intoxicating, but Jilian could not help but be slightly taken back. A long time ago, in his youth, when he cultivated at the Royal Holy Temple, the entire mountain of maple was like this, shimmering like gold, intense like fire. The unforgettable sight before him now inevitably took him on a trip down memory lane. Jilian watched for a long time before looking down at the scroll. The first few lines on the scroll were thus: "The Prince of Jeanle ascended thrice as a martial god, a misfortune god, a rubbish god." Well, all right, Jilian said out loud. If you think about it, a martial god is no different than a rubbish god. All gods are equal. All beings are equal. A snicker came from behind, and a voice said, "Is that right?" The youth on the other side of the cart lazily continued in a dread. People... In a drawl, sorry. Whoa. In a dread, that'd be sad. In a drawl, that's better. People naturally love saying that all gods are equal and all beings are equal. But if that were true, then pretty much all those different gods wouldn't exist. Jilian looked at the boy, who was still lying idly, without showing any intention of getting up. He had likely interrupted out of boredom. You're probably right, Jilian said and smiled. Jilian returned to his scroll and continued reading. Further down the line read, "Many believe that as the god of misfortune, any paintings or writings of the Prince of Jeanle have the powers of a curse. If placed on the back of a person or on the main entrance of a household, then the cursed person or household will run into all sorts of bad luck." It was hard to tell whether this was a description of a god or a ghost. Jinlian shook his head. He couldn't bear to read anymore about himself. It was probably better to read about other prominent gods of today, so he wouldn't be discourteous if he ran into them, and ended up not being able to tell them apart. A villager had mentioned the Water Master earlier, so Jinlian moved on to find the description of the Water Master. The Water Master Wudu. The Water Master Wudu controls water and simultaneously wealth. Most merchants have a water master shrine in their stores and homes to guarantee their wealth. Alright. Alrighty then. Okay, that's better. Okay, that was probably me coughing, but whatever. Jian thought this was strange. Why would a god out of water control wealth? Why would a god of water control wealth? The youth behind the hay responded, when merchants transport goods, their cargo is mainly set on waterways, so they always go to the Watermaster Temple and light a batal incense to pray for a safe journey, promising this or that when they return. After a while, the Watermaster gradually came to control wealth. The youth was actually answering his question specifically for him. Jian Lian turned around. Really? Interesting. The Watermaster must be a very powerful god, major god indeed. The youth sneered. Yeah, he's the water tyrant after all. Judging by the tone, Jian Lian didn't... Yeah, he's the water tyrant after all. Judging by the tone, Jaylan didn't think the boy was didn't think the boy took that particular heavenly official all that seriously. It didn't sound like he was complimenting him either. What's the water tyrant? The youth replied leisurely, when a ship travels down a major river, it all depends on him whether the ship can set sail. No offerings meant capsizing, pretty tyrannical, so that's how he received the nickname. Kind of like General Zhu Yang in The Sleeping General. Famous gods usually had a nickname or two between all of the realms. All the three realms. The infamous freak, the jinx, the loser, ahem, and etc. Usually it was fairly disrespectful to use those nicknames on heavenly officials. Like, if anyone were to call Mu Qing the Sleeping General, he'd surely fly into rage. Julian made a note to himself what not to call the Water Master, and said, I see. Thank you so much for enlightening me. He paused briefly, and thinking this used to be a rather intriguing conversationalist, he continued, My friend, you look young, but you know a lot. Wowies, it's them! I'm so happy! Okay, back to the story. Sorry. Just wanted to show the big picture. The youth replied, Nah, just bored. I read ever when I'm free, that's all. In the moral realm, it was easy to find books on lore that spoke of the stories of gods and ghosts, the subjects ranging from their kindness and grudges to trivialities. Some were real and some fake. It wasn't odd that the youth knew so much. Julian put down his scroll. Then, my friend, you know about gods, but do you know about the ghosts too? Which ghosts? The youth asked. Which ghosts? The youth asked. Julian replied, Crimson Rainflower Hua Cheng. The youth chuckled and finally sat up when he heard that name. He turned around and Julian's eyes suddenly lit up. The youth was about 16 or 17 years old. His tunic was redder than maple leaves, and his skin was white like snow. With eyes as bright as stars, he looked askance at him with a smile. He was exceptionally handsome, but there was an inexplicable hint of wildness in his looks. His hair was tied in a loose, my gosh. His hair was tied in a loose ponytail, crooked and carefree. The cart was driving through the forest of flaming red maple, where maple leaves danced their way to the ground. A leaf playfully landed on the shoulder of the youth, and he blew it off softly. Then looked up at Jin Lian, speaking with a shadow's smile. What do you want to know? Ask away. What do you want to know? Ask away. He looked teasing, so I probably did the voice right the first time, but I'm not really good at voice acting, but I want to get better at voice acting, so that's my whole thing. He Oh my gosh, he looked teasing yet somehow possessed the perfect composure of omniscience or omniscience, omniscience, or I don't know. Omniscience, I forgot. Though he sounded youthful, his voice was deeper than was typical for his age and was pleasant to the ear. Sitting upright on the cart, Jillian watched him thoughtfully for a moment, then said, "Crimson rain-sought flower evokes quite the imagery. Do you know where it came from, my friend?" Out of respect, Jillian didn't say, "My little friend," or Zhao Gaga, or no, it's Zhao. I forgot what it is, but Uh, I'm bad at Mandarin. I'm not good at Mandarin. Well, and I'm gonna only get better, so that's my cue to almost stop. But I'll stop quickly after the few more sentences here. The youth sat up casually, propped an arm up on Ray's knee, and fixed his sleeve. He replied unconcerned. Nothing major, really, just that there was once an incident where he cleaned out the nest of another ghost, and a shower of blood rain poured down from the skies. He saw the flower and was getting battered by the bloody rain, so he tilted his umbrella and shielded it. Julien pictured it in his head, imagining such an act of elegance under the rancid shower. He then thought about the burning of those 33 temples and laughed. "Does Hua Chung pick fights often?" The youth answered, "Not often. Depends on his mood." "What was he like before his death?" Jillian asked. "Definitely not a good person," the youth replies. "What does he look like?" And that is where we'll pause.